hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the launch of the IEPC One World Program. Well, thank you very much, one and all, for joining us for this launch of the IEPC program. So I'm just going to share my screen and do a quick introduction. So this is the launch of the One World Program as part of the International Education Professional Certificate that's brought to you by Common Purpose NAFSA and Times Higher Education. My name is Andy Coxall. I'm Managing Director of Evolve Careers. We are the EdTech arm of Common Purpose, one of the partners for the IEPC, and my team have the great pleasure of actually building the course itself. And so thrilled to be joining you today. And the IEPC is very much about developing that next global generation, I should say, of international education leaders and supporting you all as you look to navigate your institutions in a rapidly changing landscape and being effective advocates for international education and driving change across your organization and serving your students. Today, I wanted to give a very warm welcome to a number of people. One, a very warm welcome to all of our IEPC participants, whether you have completed the course already or whether you are currently going through it and are therefore part of the One World Program. This marks the launch of the One World Program, and I'm going to talk more about what that means for you guys in terms of what's coming up next a bit later on. I also wanted to give a very warm welcome to all of our, can I call you interested parties, people who've maybe heard about the IEPC, maybe you joined one of the webinars about it in the past and are interested in joining. We'd love it if you would join the One World Program and join this cohort and be a part of this journey with us over the next three months. But you're very welcome. It's a delight to have you here. We are, of course, and we all know this, that's why we're all here, joined by Fanta Aw, who's Executive Director and CEO of NAFSA, who's going to give a bit of an introduction to the One World Program. Thank you so much for joining us. Delighted.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
Not at all. I mean, you join actually wearing a number of hats, of course, as CEO of NAFSA, one of our partners for the IEPC. But I'm very proud to say, as someone who has completed the IEPC yourself as part of your commitment to your own professional development. So really excited that you are yourself part of the One World Program, alongside obviously being an absolute figurehead and powerhouse in the international education community. I'm sure everyone on the call is, well, I hope everyone on the call has had a chance to meet you through the many different activities. You seem to be in multiple places around the world at the same time. I'm never sure how you quite do it. But I've always been touched by your care and commitment to this community whenever I've had the opportunity to meet you and when I've seen you with the community. So delighted that you can be here to launch the program today. I know your time is very tight and very valuable, so we're going to kick off proceedings today with a few questions that I prepared that I want to ask Fanta to talk about professional development, the sector, her own personal experiences, and this community as a whole. And once we've had that conversation, there'll be a chance for everyone in the group to ask questions. So please put questions in the chat. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that as we go. We'll bring those questions in. We've got plenty of time for that. And then after that, Fanta will head off, and then we will just run through a bit about the program and what you can expect next. So that's the basic gist of what we're going to be doing today. So to start with, Fanta, thinking about professional development, which is obviously what this is all about, but also thinking about the sector that, I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say it's going through a pretty significant change at the moment and challenge. But this is more about the opportunity that comes with change, because of course, when going through change, it can be easy to have your head down, to be firefighting, to be, batten down the hatches and just trying to get things done. But in this moment is opportunity. So I was interested, I guess, in a number of multiple fold question for you, Fanta, to start with. So one, what do you see as the big opportunities for these leaders in international education? And what kind of professional development do you think they need to be focusing on so that they are the future-ready international education leaders who can seize the opportunities that are around us and present themselves to us today?
No, well, first of all, thank you, Andy. Thank you for your leadership and for the partnership with you all. I think it has made a world of difference. And I can't think of wanting to be anywhere else but here on a topic that is near and dear to me, and you'll understand a little bit more why I'm so passionate about this topic of professional development. But I want to go back to your first question, which is, I think, a very important question, and that is, given all of the change that is taking place, the disruptions that is taking place, where does, professional development fits in? What are some of the big opportunities that I see within our field? And what I would say are two things that come to mind. One is we need to have an abundance mindset. And what do I mean by an abundance mindset? I think all too often during times of crisis, during times of so much change, there's a scarcity mindset that sets in. And we start to think about all of the things that we don't have, as opposed to thinking about what is it that we have and how do we best leverage what it is that we have. And I would say there are a couple of things that we all have. One is knowledge. We bring knowledge to the work that we do. We bring passion to the work that we do. We also bring a set of skills to the work that we do. And I think one of the gifts that we have in being in international education, particularly within the higher education sector, is lifelong learning. We never stop learning. And so I see these crisis moments, I see these moments of change as opportunities to ask ourselves, what is it that I'm supposed to be learning at this point? And what is it that I can spend my energy and choose to spend my energy on during these times of really major crisis? So what I would say is a lot of things right now are being questioned in our field. A lot of things are being challenged in our fields. Things such as what is the true value proposition of education, let alone international education? These are big questions, and it's easy to be overwhelmed by it. So the questions we need to ask ourselves is, what is the value proposition of our work? And that requires against this, what I call an abundance mindset, because we need to ask ourselves, this field has been here for a very, very long time, and it's gone through multiple iterations and multiple reimagining. And this is, I think, the best opportunity we have at this current time is to reimagine again. And I do have faith in our field and in the people who are in our field that we have not only the capacity, but I would say we have the responsibility to reimagine at this current time. And some of the reimagining that we need to ask ourselves is, what is it that students today need to be equipped with in order to be the kind of global citizens we need in the world, not just today, but for the foreseeable future? What is our responsibility for preparing the next generation of leaders? And it's those leaders are, of course, our students, our scholars, but the next generation of leaders in our own field. That's another example of what I would say are the opportunities that are available to us. So the reason I started with, I believe in an abundance mindset and not a scarcity mindset, is because we should be able to say to ourselves, even in the most challenging times, what are things that I can control for? But more importantly, what are things that I can contribute my energy to? And that's sort of where I always come. That's always where I come from. And that's the orientation that I like to bring to my work. And that's what keeps me motivated. That's what keeps me energized. That's what keeps me hopeful in this kind of work. And so that's a little bit of what I would say. I would say major disruptions, but boy, with major disruptions come true opportunities. And we should not be afraid to reimagine, because the wherewithal is there, the capacity is there. And frankly, as a society, it behooves all of us to do our part in this reimagining. And that's what I would say are sort of the big shift here. Yes, policy changes are tough. Financial issues are real for a lot of our institutions, and the, sort of the devaluing that perhaps some members of our society wish to, sort of take on with higher education is there. But we also have evidence supporting that higher education will never be an area that we should not invest in. There will continue to be major skill gaps all around the world. And the answer to that skill gap is higher education, but more importantly, it is international education. So that's sort of my orientation as a starting point, Andy.
No, thank you. And when we think about professional development, I think that holds so true, because there is that knee-jerk reaction that happens in time of crisis and times of economic challenge of, right, batten down the hatches, cut your professional development, stop investing in people, and just sweat them really hard, which is exactly the wrong thing to be doing, because you need your people to be inspired, upskilled, motivated, at their best, supported in those times of crisis to seize on those challenges and to have that abundance mindset. But if you start by cutting and you start by limiting people, you're forcing that scarcity culture directly on people, and it's unsurprising if people then behave in that way and adopt that mindset. So I think that's yeah, that's really, really powerful, and I think something that we can all hang on to is, I guess, how do we approach the world with that view? And if you can do that sitting where you are and given the challenges that that are being thrown your way, but you can approach the world that way, I mean, that's fantastic. Question for you then, really, which is a personal question more so, is in terms of professional development. What's been the most impactful professional development experiences you've had across your career, and why? What are the things that stand out when you just think, wow, that was just such amazing PD, that made such a difference to who I am?
The most meaningful professional development opportunities I've had have been times when it's called for humility. And by what do I mean by that? Humility in the sense of saying, you know what? I've been in this field for a long time. In my case, it's going to be give or take 36 plus years. And yet we never stop learning. And I would say that in my time, I can think of so many chapters and verses where I was confronted with really challenging situations, unexpected circumstances, where I had to, in many ways, stretch myself. Yeah. And in stretching myself, it required problem solving. And in order to problem solve effectively, I had to step back and say to myself, you know what? Here are the gaps in my own knowledge. Here are the gaps in my own skill sets that I have to be able to not only recognize, but invest time in retooling and upskilling myself in doing. That's really been some of the most pivotal moments as I think about my journey in this area of work and what it meant, right? Here's a typical example. I was charged with I was charged at the institution that I was in previously with leading the effort in COVID response for the entire institution. 15,000 students, X numbers of faculty and staff and all of that, and really managing our COVID response. And I had to say to myself, I've never managed or responded to a pandemic before, let alone lead an entire institution where there's so much at stake in being able to do that. But here's where I was reminded of is one, the humility to recognize that this is a very new and different circumstance and that I would have to stretch myself. But then also recognizing that there were tools in my toolbox that I could probably leverage in this instance. Crisis management. International educators, boy, do we know about crisis management. Relationship cultivation, boy, do we know about relationship cultivation, right? Partnership, boy, do we know about that, and so forth, right? So it was figuring out what was already in my toolbox that I had used to some extent, but knowing that it had to be at a very different scale. And then realizing, okay, this is at a different scale. How do I respond to that in the way that I need to be able to respond to? So I would say humility in recognizing what I don't know, but also then recognizing there are tools in the toolbox that we need to, in many ways, not hesitate to pull back, but we do need to recognize in pulling them back, we need to do it at a different scale. And that's going to require doing more of our own homework and not being afraid to learn along the way. And yes, there will be mistakes made along the way, but there's basis from which to work. And so that's just one simple example, Andy, for me. But I feel like every day in the work that I'm engaged with, every single day I'm pushed to learn. I'm pushed to stretch my boundaries. And more than anything else, I'm pushed to find myself in discomfort. And I've always said, you actually grow more in discomfort than in comfort.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's talking to someone who works in an international school earlier this week about professional development. And this notion of it can be easy to hang on to, oh, that conference, that course, that event. But so much of professional development, as you say, is that continuous learning. It's happening all the time, contextually, depending on what you're doing in the moment, the informal conversations you have, you're constantly absorbing. And I think, yeah, to recognize that we are constantly in that mode and we're constantly developing rather than sort of hanging it on a thing, I think is a really important message, because, yeah, there's so many different opportunities for that. And I think we need to recognize that. And I think it comes back to your point about humility and recognizing strengths and areas of development need. We always have to have our antenna up, but this is an opportunity where I could stretch myself and learn something, even if it is in my day to day.
And I would say the other part about this is we have to constantly invest in our own development.
Mm.
It's an important investment to make, because I think also often we're so in the busy of it all. There's so many things that grab our attention all the time. And this is a profession where this is a giving profession. People get into this field because they're givers. They want to give, they believe in the value of human connections, they believe in the transformation that comes from education. They come with tremendous passion and all of that. So it's a profession where giving is just a natural, it's part of the DNA. And I've often said you can't give what you don't have. So part of it requires you need to replenish your own cup. And the way I find that I replenish my own cup is through a series of things. One is finding time for really sort of being grounded on a daily basis, and that comes from the practice of wellness. But the other place that I find important in replenishing my own cup is in investment in my own development. And this part of the learning is such an important piece of the work, because we model it for those that are part of our team. We model it if we're on campuses for our students, so that they also understand that we're both teachers and learners at the same time. But we should never forget that importance of learning, and that requires investment of time, investment of some resources, and really investment of prioritizing that. And I think that's an important component of something that I've continued to learn, Andy, and that to me is absolutely crucial. You cannot give what you don't have, but in order to be able to give, you have to replenish your cup. To replenish your cup, you have to make the time and you have to invest in yourself.
It makes me think of your infamous long walks in the morning and your walks around cities and all about that you do to focus on that centering and that wellness.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Well, we have to talk about the IEPC, given that you are one of our alumnus from that program and a proud owner of the certificate yourself. So having done the IEPC for your own professional development, what were your biggest learnings from the course, and how have you applied them in your day-to-day?
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm absolutely a very proud alum of the IEPC. And I'll tell you a little bit, in answering this question, I'll tell you a little bit why I felt it was very important for me to go through the entire curriculum. One, it goes back to what I talked about, which is this piece of abundance and learning and lifelong learning and investment in self. And I always find it doesn't matter how long you've been in the field, there's always room for you to learn, and there's always room for you to reflect. And so this aspect of reflexivity is actually quite important. And this idea that we can always retool our learning and can always upscale is an important concept. And for me, the IEPC represented that. One, for me, there's several reasons, but the most important reason is knowing that this is a curriculum that in many ways was built with people like myself in mind, right? Folks who have busy lives, who have limited amount of time, but who also are confronted with challenges all the time that they need to be able to feel grounded in and be proactively engaged with and not reactive. And so that helped, the fact that it really was built with that in mind. And I did the certificate because I wanted the entire full curriculum. And so there were a couple of points that really came as aha moments. And I will say this, Andy, in earnest and with humility. In going through it, I said to myself, I know that I'll learn something, because there's always opportunity to learn things and you don't have the time to spend time on it. But I will say I didn't know how much I ended up learning. And in that sense, I underestimated the breadth of knowledge that is so instrumental in this field. And some of it was important refreshers that I needed to be reminded of because I hadn't used them for a period of time. And it's often this idea that you really need to, in many ways, is practicing the muscles of learning. And I think that was important. So there were a couple of things that were major highlights for me. One is the fact that the curriculum is designed along the competencies. And all of these competencies are absolutely essential to the work that we do. And I would say for where I am, in particular, I went in knowing that the competency around leadership was key, but that business acumen is absolutely necessary. And I would argue that too often in our field, there is not enough business acumen that's built in, because there's this sort of productive tension between this idea of we are about, doing good, and business is not about doing good. I'm like, no, they're absolutely key to it, right? So that was an example of an area that was key, was really getting deeper into the business acumen as a part of that and the leadership. The other components that really spoke to me were about relationship cultivation. And what were the parts that were sort of most aha moment? One was the fact that it was in bite size. And I could absorb it for the period of time. I would be sitting at airports because of my travel.
Obviously.
And I would be like, you know what? I'm sitting at the airport. I'm going to go through the curriculum and let me go through some of the modules I was in, right? So having that cadence really worked a lot, right? But then more importantly was testing my own knowledge, right? And there were many things that I got wrong, right? But it wasn't about getting it right or wrong. It was about what can I learn from that? That was important. And then the part that was, to me, the icing on the cake was having the resources. And believe it or not, I actually went through those resources to see what was there, to see what is the state of the field. And that was quite important in the way learning took place. So I say this to say, for me, this was incredibly valuable because even though I've been in the field for about 37 years, I learned a tremendous amount from professionals in the field who were deeply embedded in these different domain of knowledge and could provide examples after examples after examples of it that I could relate to. But also, more importantly, the curriculum was designed to be dynamic and in a way that fits my lifestyle. As someone who could not have, who cannot sit through something for maybe 3 hours, I didn't have to worry about that, right?
Yeah.
And it kept me also accountable. And that was the other piece that you need, because when you're busy lives, you need accountability. You need accountability partners. And in some ways, by having the nudge and having the prompt, it helped me stay the course and kind of get the knowledge that I needed. And I have notes from it that I'm using today, right? I have notes and example from, how do you lead your team? What are the kind of questions you need to ask your team? It was actually valuable for me to be able to step back and say, you know what? I could do a much better job in this space. I think I'm doing okay. And I think I'm doing fine, but actually I've been nudged that I could do much better in this space. And that I think is quite valuable. So for me, having the opportunity to know that this is something that's available at any stage of your career, I think was really the most helpful part of the curriculum. And yes, I did the certificate because for me, I felt all of them coming together was actually quite valuable. And so for me, that was an important investment in myself. And I didn't have my company pay for it. I paid for it because that was my investment in myself.
No, thank you. And it's fabulous to hear so many of the different features of it, which I will be running through with everyone after this. So to your question, Raza, yes, there is a certificate, and I'll explain what that looks like in the micro-credential afterwards as well. And I'll draw upon some of the pieces that Fanta talked about in terms of the subject matter experts and the bite-sized nature of it. But I would encourage you all, we still have time with Fanta. I've got a couple of questions I want to ask her as well. But if you have questions that you want to ask of her, this is your moment. Put them in the chat. Let us know what it is you'd like to know, questions you'd like to ask directly. I'll pull them into my thread to the best of my ability. And after I've asked my questions, ask them of Fanta as well. So please do share. This is your chance to do so. Community, though. I want to talk about community, Fanta, because community is obviously so important to everything in life, and to NAFSA, but especially to this One World Program. This came, we launched this in response to a desire for community and a hunger for community that was felt at NAFSA a few months back. And the idea that, well, let's take people on this IEPC journey together rather than it being purely self-paced. And as an advocate of this community, and that's massively downplaying it, one of the biggest champions of this community in the world. And through NAFSA, you've been doing this forever. So for you, I mean, what makes this international community so special for you? What is it that you feel they bring and that you want to celebrate and call them out for?
Yeah, no, so I think there are lots of things that come to mind as I think about the community. And you can see this illustrated in the chat, right? Just look at the webinar chat and see where people are coming from, right? You're having people from India, people from Nigeria, people from San Diego, people from UAE, from Vietnam, and so forth. This idea of a global community that is interconnected and with a shared mission, I think it's something that cannot be understated, especially during a time of tremendous division in our world. I think there's something to be said about the power of community and the collective wisdom that comes from community. And so that's one of the things that often comes to mind, and that to me is a shout out, right? Is that during our most challenging time, you have a resilient community that really believes in the promise of education, believes in the promise of this work. And that's something that I think we should all celebrate and we should all cheer on. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that there's never any challenges. But what it also means is that wherever we're situated in the world, we're not alone, Andy. We're not alone. We can in many ways leverage community from across oceans, from across cultures, from across languages, from across different domain of knowledge and so forth. And that to me is the power of the kind of work that we're engaged with. And that's what community means for me. And that is also community that is with you, not just today, but community that is on that journey with you throughout. The ability to be able to, as a result of being part of this initiative and many others, that you can call on colleagues in other parts of the world for ideas, for thought leadership, to bounce off ideas with no judgment and so forth, is something that's actually quite important. And it's something that is needed, whether it's in the form of mentorship or just sort of, thought partnership. And I think that's actually quite important. Also, it's about, what we're all then be able to bring to the table. We don't all come from the same place. We don't all start from the same place, and that's okay. But that's what makes it so enriching, is that we can bring in so many different perspectives in the work that we're doing. And that's been one of the things that I've particularly enjoyed about the One World, is that it's moved from, let's have a curriculum where you're going through that journey as your own journey of professional development, to then saying there's a wider network that's available to you. And how do you best leverage that network for support, for thought leadership, for ideas, and really for creating that critical network that is needed? And I think that's something that is pretty unique and is important. And that's really the strength of organizations like NAFSA and yours, is really creating sort of what I call learning circles and creating learning communities.
Absolutely. And it speaks to that accountability you mentioned earlier. A community that holds each other to account for growth, for development, for investment is so important, given, as you say, we're all busy. There are so many competing priorities, but that value of community. There's a question that's come in from Kira, which I'd love to ask on her behalf. Are there any specific reflection exercises that you would recommend participating in alongside the IEPC or alongside day-to-day work in international education?
Yeah, no, great question. And there's one in particular that has become part of almost my daily practice. And it was the one that was around thinking about leadership and feedback loops.
Okay.
How do you seek feedback throughout to make sure that you're staying the pulse and that in many ways you're exhibiting leadership in terms of values? And it's this idea that spending time, investing in asking questions along the way, both opens you up to what's in front of you, but also allow others to be reflective as well. So, and that was one of those exercises that I remember going through. And I remember sort of downloading that specific exercise, spending some more time thinking about it and saying, yes, I've done some of this, but not to the scale and level. And what I have seen as a result of really that specific exercise is that it has really opened up space for greater innovation from those that I'm engaging. So, Kira, this is one in particular that really resonates for me, because if it started with how you get feedback, how do you solicit feedback, how do you become a better listener to that, and so forth. But what I realized as a result of putting it in motion more and more is that it, in addition to getting the feedback, it opened up space for innovation from others. So that's one specific one that comes to mind and that I've put into more practice as we kind of move forward. So that's been one. Another one was around, this piece of sort of inclusion and equity and really understanding cultural humility, a concept that I have taught, a concept that I've, imparted to students and so forth. But I was able to get a different perspective from the faculty who was leading that about a different angle to cultural humility that I hadn't thought about. And there was a series of exercises that were provided that really became guiding principles to kind of, in many ways, push me in thinking much more about this topic in a way that was different and was in many ways refreshing. So that's another exercise that immediately came to mind for me. And then a last one was about stakeholders engagement and the exercise about the matrix of how you think about who are your stakeholders, right? And how you kind of begin to sort of tease through that. again, for many of us who are in our field, we do a lot of work in partnership, a lot of work in stakeholders engagement, but it was helpful to have like a framework that can help me contextualize that in a different way. So those are some of the exercises that have come to mind for me as I've been doing this work. And then an exercise that is not listed here, but that I can say is what Andy talked about, is these long walks, 5 miles. 5 miles. It's amazing. It's amazing what the mind can get up to when you're walking 5 miles, right? It's this free flow of idea, this free flow of sort of in many ways synthesizing what your day has been, free flow of sort of in many ways releasing your fears for the day, and just kind of letting go is one of those exercises that I cannot overemphasize.
Your commitment to it is admirable. It's admirable.
And
You
it's
must
hard.
get through
It's
a
hard.
lot of trainers.
It is hard.
Or sneakers, I should say.
Yes, I'm always in sneakers, by the way. That's the other thing. I'm always in
Thanks,
sneakers.
thanks,
So just
Kieran,
in
for your
case.
question. Keep the questions coming. You can ask what sneakers Fanta uses to get through those.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
is a question from Nisha that I'd love to ask. So how does this course address challenges specifically in our current scenario to our industry? So I guess it's that notion around how is it grounded? And you talked a bit about that.
Yeah. So I would say there were a couple of things that that came up for me as I was taking the course. One is, first of all, the entire course is really grounded in the field of international education. That's the baseline. The examples, the number of examples that are cited are all coming from our sector. So that's one of the things that I think was important. So then how does this specifically address the challenges of today? It's the framework that it provides. I think those frameworks are applicable in the exact moment that we're in. So whether it's frameworks around how do you think about stakeholders, right? In the current moment, it may be that there's new stakeholders that were not part of sort of your matrix of stakeholders before because the situation has evolved. So it's providing you with those kind of examples and framework to push you to think beyond the usual boundaries of where we are and to not stay contained within those boundaries. And so that was the part that I found to be most helpful, was having those frameworks. It gives you sort of prompts of questions you should ask yourself. And those questions then force you to open up more to perhaps areas of engagement that you hadn't thought about. And so from that perspective, I think that was key. The other thing that I think it does, which is important, it provides you with language. Language that then allows you to be able to make the case for your work, to make the business case for why the things that you need to do are important in this kind of current environment where there's a scarcity mindset about where we need to cut and what we need to cut. Having that, the language and the tools to be able to be your own advocate within institutions and organizations, I thought was incredibly valuable and important in this specific times of challenges. And so there were lots of scenarios and examples that were provided, but I think to me, those were the things that I find most important in today and the relevance of it in the current moment that we're in.
Thank you. I hope, Nisha, that answers your question and gives you a flavor. I am going to talk a bit about the competency framework and where that came from and the grounding and the subject matter experts in a minute or two. But we've got a couple more minutes of Fanta, so I don't know if anyone has any. Oh, I'm glad it helped. Fantastic. If anyone has quick fingers and a question they want to ask, type away, and we'd love to ask it on your behalf and get Fanta's perspective.
Well, I mean, while we wait for questions, I wanted to say one thing. I mean, the fact
Please.
that so many of our colleagues have shown up here today tells me two things. One is how invaluable community is, particularly during this time. I think it speaks volume about that. But it also speaks to, I think, something that is secondary as well, but important, is this recognition that we're lifelong learners.
Yeah.
And that we never stop learning.
Indeed. And I think it's interesting, actually, that with the IEPC, we've had a lot of people who maybe are either quite new to the industry and are coming into work, or people who pivoted from a different industry into international education. And it's been really helpful for them to find their feet and to understand the context and to learn those skills, coupled with people like yourself who've been living and breathing the industry for so long. I remember some feedback from someone else who said, their biggest learning was that after 20 years, there's still so much to learn. And I thought that was really powerful. I think Shalaja, I will answer your question in a second when it comes to that. Noah, I think this is a great question. I guess, yeah, I guess that context, Fanta, of being a one-person office and being new, if you are and you're newer to international education, how do you make sure that it isn't too overwhelming when you have so much going on in your day job and then so much to learn and so many courses that you need to do? Yeah, how can people find that balance?
Well, so I think for me, that was my concern when I was going in. I said, you know what, I want to do this, but is this going to be too overwhelming? And what I found was because of the way it's been chunked out, I could very easily, if all I had was 15 minutes, I could put in 15 minutes at that time. And I feel like in coming back, I would be starting all over, right? And if what I had was a Saturday morning where I could find an hour to myself, that was what I would find, and I would be able to do that. So one of the things that I found, and with my schedule, for those who know me know my schedule is always full and there's a lot of things that are going on. But I actually found it refreshing because what it also did for me was to be able to step back. And again, because it was so dynamic with the videos, with the, the tests that I could take, with the scenarios and all of these different things, it made learning actually fun. That was the other part of it. It wasn't one of those things where I was like, oh goodness, I've finished my degrees. Don't tell me I'm going back to school. I don't need to be sitting in any classes anymore. I needed something very different. And one of the things that I remember writing to you, Andy, about was how dynamic and fresh the materials were and how easy it was to be able to sort of go through it. And in fact, it was refreshing in that way. It's not the usual thing where you're sitting through it, clicking and so forth. It's not that kind of course. And so what I would say to our colleagues who have a busy life, like I have a very busy life, who don't have as much time, the pacing is actually just the right pacing. And Andy, you can talk a lot more about how long each of them takes, because it's clear that it's been designed with people like ourselves in mind. People who don't have as much time, but who want to learn, but want dynamic approach to learning and need, methodologies, pedagogically that really suits our need. And that to me was really quite important to be able to do. And so that's why I said I could do it while I was sitting in airports. I could do it in my hotel room when I came back from a long meeting where like it was so heavy and I was like, I need something to step back to. I could do it then. I could do it when I was on my treadmill, right? While I was trying to get steps because it was a rainy day and I was trying to get my steps in. I could do it in lots of these different things. So in many ways, what you're hearing me say is I was able to incorporate it in aspects of my life and not feel like I had to sacrifice so much more of my time to do that.
Well, thank you, Fanta. And I'm mindful of your time because we are running out. And I will answer that question, Anuba. That's a very good question. And I'll talk about the timeframes, but I'm delighted that you could join to actually bring this to life, Fanta, because I can talk about how long it takes and how many modules and this, that, and the other. And it's important information, but it's not from here. And for you to talk about your personal experience and how that aligns to your views on an abundance mindset, the times that we're in, the importance of community, the importance of professional development and continuous learning and humility. I think such powerful messages for us all as we think, as we go about our day to day, but also think about the change we want to create and the students that we're supporting and the sector that we care deeply about and want to help and champion in the way that you do. So I wanted to say a huge thank you, Fanta, from all of us here for your time and for your inspiration. When you're free to go to your steps or to your very intense meetings or whatever it is you have to do now, but we're hugely grateful for your time. And for us all, we're going to continue. So I'm going to share my screen now.
And Andy, thank you. And to all of our colleagues who are joining us, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do every single day on behalf of the field. I know that we so appreciate that as an organization. And so please know that, you're not alone in this work and in this challenge, and make sure that you lean in on this community that we've talked about. Thanks again, Andy, and thanks everybody.
Lovely to see you, Fanta. Thanks so much. Now, I'm just going to share my screen and let's bring it back to the nuts and bolts because you're asking a lot of very good questions that we need to be talking about. So if I hide that, I want to hide that. Hopefully you can see this all. Fantastic. So one of the things that Fanta spoke to was contextual. So how does the IEPC speak to your world, your context, your needs, your development? It's built on the NAFSA International Education Professional Competencies. So these are 12 competencies critical for leading and operating in international education. These were come up with over a very long research, surveying, stakeholder analysis, and engagement process, working with subject matter experts from across the whole field, across the world. This isn't a US perspective, this is a global perspective on the core skills that are needed. And we've heard about them: relationship cultivation, leadership, business acumen, inclusion, equity, and so on, risk assessment, crisis management, thinking about Fanta's story about leading an institution through COVID. And the whole course is built on these. So every single one of these 12 competencies, there is a module on. And those are then grouped together into packages. So there's 4 packages as a whole that you go through. So practically, what does that mean? As shared, each module is led by a subject matter expert. So someone that's been drawn through our collective networks, an expert in the field from different types of institutions, different roles, different parts of the world, who we designed it with. So our starting point was to sit down with them and really understand, when we talk about building trust and relationships, when we talk about data analysis, when we talk about leadership, what does that mean to you? How does that play out? How have you developed it? What are some of the tools and techniques you use? How do you develop people within your teams? Where is the nuance and the challenge within that? What's the opportunity within that? And then we film them and then build the courses from there. So we have an asynchronous base of courses and modules within that IEPC course. Each module takes about an hour, 75 minutes to complete. And there are action plans that Fanta referenced at the end that you go through so that you set your own accountability to your learning goals and make sure that you're focused on what you need to then put into practice. There's no point going through this and learning without putting it into practice. Obviously, you're educators, I don't need to tell you that, but action plans are built around that. You can work your way through that module as quickly or slowly as you want, in one go, in small chunks. You can sneak 5 minutes at an airport, as Fanta spoke to. But it's up to you how you complete those. So what that means is time commitment. Obviously, do the maths. It's about 12 hours plus of learning that, as part of the One World Program, we're running over 3 months. So you have plenty of time to do it. And if you're mad busy at the moment, it's a super busy time on campus, you can push it back and do it when you want to. We're not setting it up to say you must do X, Y, and Z modules in the first month, X, Y, and Z in the second month. No, it's entirely up to you. That's partly self-paced. We then have live elements to some of the questions that were there. So in a month's time, and I'll share the dates in a second, we have our first action learning set. So we're bringing everyone on the IEPC together to start to share some of their current leadership challenges that they're facing. So we want to tap into the expertise and the support and the experience that exists within this One World community to help each other to move forward with some of the challenges that we're going through. And that's both so people can help and support each other, but also learn from other people's contexts as you go. And so we want to use that as a space where you can bring challenges and support each other. Those can be related to the themes of the IEPC, absolutely. They can just as easily be about things that you're going through and that you want this community to be there to help, to support, to inspire, engage, and all those good things. So we have those action learning sets middle of next month after that, and then we have a final reflection workshop in December. So that means it's another 3 hours of commitment. So we're at a base level, you're looking at about 15 hours across 3 months, but you, as I say, you can weight that to whenever you're able to do that. Why should you do this? What is it that we're hoping you're going to be able to walk away with, other than this amazing community and have made contacts and friends and been able to learn and share and grow together? We want, and it's what Fanta was talking about, we want you to be able to champion and advocate for international education priorities in your institution, in your teams. We want to support you as you champion this sector and what this sector does and what this sector means. We want to help you to be able to really build and nurture and maintain constructive conversations with stakeholders. Fanta talked a lot about that stakeholder engagement, stakeholder mapping. We really want to help you to understand your place within the ecosystem, within your institution, within the sector, and understand how you can work with different stakeholders to achieve the advocacy that you're looking to drive. We want to help you to be able to innovate and to come up with new ideas to drive results, team performance, to be more effective in what you do. This is really practical stuff that we want to help you to be better in what you do and your day-to-day, This isn't sort of, a lot of it, some of it's broad, but a lot of it's really rooted in what you're doing and giving you the skills and ideas and frameworks and tools, as Fanta said, to be able to be more effective in what you do. We also want to help, and this is part of, I think, it's part of not being alone, but it's also recognizing, how can you connect your role within your institution? You might be 1 in 15,000, as Fanta said, and I know some institutions are much bigger than that. But how do you connect your role to the institutional goals? How do you deliver on your purpose and the institutional purpose and help deliver for students? So there's a big piece around helping you to think about your role within that and how you operate within that ecosystem and how you operate within that community. And then this piece around continuous learning, helping you to identify the areas that you just need to keep growing in, developing, investing in over your time. We've been running it now for 15, 16 months, and we're getting some fantastic feedback from participants. So these are the 4 packages. So underneath Agile Leadership, there's 3 modules, 3 competencies we look at. We score them on a scale of 1 to 5. And we've got an average of 4.4 out of 5 for Agile Leadership, 4.2 for compliance care, 4.1 for inclusive programs, and 4.1 for decision making. It's delivering a real tangible benefit and output for the participants who come on it. The program itself is a One World program. So for those of you who are on the IEPC currently, or those of you who have completed but want to be part of this community and part of this program, obviously today we've done the opening workshop with Fanta. We then have our first learning group session workshop on the 15th of October, our second one on the 12th of November, and then the final reflection workshop on the 10th of December. For those of you that are signed up, we're going to follow up with an email with invites for each of those sessions. So you know the times, you've got the Zoom links and all those kind of things, and you've got all of that information so you can get it in your calendar, lock it in, and then we'll go from there. And then those of you who are yet to join the IEPC, you will, as soon as you sign up, we'll send you all of that information so that you know what to expect. Here's the QR code so that you can enroll in the program. I'm just going to shut that and just see if there are any questions at all while keeping that there. Minimum, maximum age, no deadline from the time it's purchased, no. Oh, sorry, yes. So yes, we do ask that you complete it within 6 months. This is just part of NAFSA sort of policy around making sure that you engage with it. So I don't know who you are. I'm going to put my email in the chat. You can reach out. So if you think you need a bit more time, and because obviously we're talking about December, my maths isn't the best in the world, but even I can work out the end of May to December is not going to work for you. Christopher, I've signed up for the IEPC. How do I make sure I'm part of it? You're part of it. You're here. We will follow up over email. We'll send you these details to these sessions so that you have all of that to hand. So don't worry. We will make sure that you get all the information. I'm keeping that down. I'm just going to check the Q&A again. I don't see it within the chat. Just very quickly. Sorry, I've got a few more questions here. I've completed it. Thank you. Is it free? No, Hala. There is a cost attached to this. So if you scan that QR code, it will take you to the page. You can see if you're a NAFSA member, there's an exclusive discount for you. If Anuba, if you do one module, do you get a certificate? Yes. So the way it works is you'll get micro-credential for different sections, and then you get an overall completion certificate. So there's different certifications. So yes, you can actually do the Agile Leadership package. You can do compliance care. You can do decision making on its own, or you can do the full course. If you do one of the packages, you are of course welcome. You are part of the One World program. I'll make that bigger for you guys now. You're still part of it. So you'll be invited to all of those sessions. It's not just for people who have enrolled to the full program. So yes, you'll get certification, but you won't get the full certificate and micro-credential to say that you've completed the full certificate, but you'll get certification for the element that you've done. Thank you, Joanne, for putting the link to line. Elizabeth, all the costs are on there. It depends on whether you're a NAFSA member or not. So you'll need to have a look there so you can see that. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Timothy, for your question. I'd suggest you just drop us a line. So there's an email address there on the page, and let us know your circumstance and what's going on. Similarly, for the person who wants slightly more than 6 months, please do just reach out directly, and we'll see how we can support. But please do put any more questions you have in the Q&A or the chat. But otherwise, for those of you who are part of the One World Program, I can't wait to see you next month for the first Action Learning Set learning group that we'll be running. For those of you who have joined and are interested, I hope you scan and join up, and that that it's been a useful experience to hear Fanta's experience of it, and then I hope you enroll and have your own experience on it. So thank you very much to you all for taking the time to join today. I hope you have taken as much as I have. I'm going to remember this abundance mindset thing. That's absolutely gold dust. I think it's a fantastic way to look, and I've already, it's running through my head all the different moments of late where I've had a scarcity mindset and I have not been serving myself the best. So I think that's been a hugely helpful lesson for me. But I hope you found it helpful. I hope that those who've not signed up, that you're intrigued enough to scan that QR code and join us on the One World Program. And for all of our friends on the IEPC, I'll see you again next month. But thank you very much, everyone. Hope you have wonderful mornings, afternoons, evenings, wherever you are. And yeah, we'll speak to you soon. So thank you very much, everyone, and take care. All the very best.